What if I told you that a perfectly engineered metallic sphere buried in Colombia may be 12,000 years old, and scientists still cannot explain how it exists? That at this very moment, a glowing red object from outside our solar system is racing toward the sun, breaking every rule we thought comets obeyed? And what if I told you these two impossible mysteries are not separate, but may actually be speaking to each other right now? You'll hear how myths of ancient floods and fire from the heavens may not be stories at all, but memories of earlier cycles, earlier civilizations that faced this exact same test. You'll discover why governments guard this sphere with armed secrecy, why data about the interstellar visitor is being withheld, and why some scientists whisper that humanity itself may be part of an experiment older than history. By the end, you'll know the one truth that changes everything. The sky may not just be watching us, it may be answering us. Before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the new hype button, but only if you genuinely enjoy calm science to relax with or fall asleep to. Right now, as you listen, something impossible rests in the Colombian highlands, something that bends history and mocks everything we think we know about human civilization. It is called the Buga Sphere, a metallic orb discovered near the town of Buga, gleaming with a perfection no tool of the ancient world could have achieved. Smooth to the point of impossibility, round as though sculpted by mathematics itself, heavy enough to strain the arms of those who try to lift it, yet silent and watchful like an eye that has been closed for millennia. Locals who first approached the object whispered of its unnatural balance. A ball that would not wobble when rolled, an object so flawlessly symmetric that even modern aerospace engineers would struggle to replicate it. Under the harsh sun of Colombia, it did not tarnish. Under the humidity of the jungle, it did not rust. Under the touch of human hands, it carried no seams or joints. A perfect sphere, seamless, eternal, resistant to time itself. Then came the claim that set the world ablaze. 12,000 years. That is the number whispered in forums, broadcast in late-night podcasts, and spread in videos that rack up millions of views. A carbon analysis, they say, tested organic resin connected to the sphere, and the numbers point to an age of more than 12,000 years. If true, the Buga Sphere predates Stonehenge, predates the pyramids, predates the dawn of written language. Picture the world in that age. Glaciers still clawed their way across continents, seas were lower, vast regions of land now drowned beneath the ocean were dry ground. Humanity was scattered in small tribes, building fires, shaping stone tools, painting on cave walls. Yet, in that same epoch, someone or something crafted a sphere of polished alloy, inscribed with markings that some call symbols and others call circuitry. The contradiction is violent. Either everything we know about history is wrong, or the artifact did not come from human hands at all. Eyewitnesses described more than just its physical strangeness. Farmers claimed that the soil near the sphere blackened, as though life itself recoiled from its presence. Explorers spoke of compasses spinning wildly when brought close, needles twitching like trapped insects. Viral clips show the sphere humming faintly, a vibration like a living throat when exposed to Sanskrit chants. No one can say whether the videos are real or staged, yet the imagery is hypnotic, a relic from the Ice Age responding to one of humanity's oldest tongues. This is not the first time such a sphere has haunted human imagination. In the year 1974, the Betts family discovered a similar metallic ball on their property in Florida. That orb was said to roll uphill, emit mechanical noises in the night, and resist every attempt to cut it open. The military seized it, researchers examined it, and then it vanished into silence, locked away in facilities that refused to speak. Now, half a century later, the Buga Sphere emerges, a second echo of the same enigma, but this time with a claim so audacious it rips through the veil of skepticism. Not modern, not medieval, not even ancient in the way we use the word, but primordial, born in the twilight of the last ice age. Metals should not last that long. Archaeologists know this with certainty. Bronze statues crumble in the open air after a few thousand years. Iron swords from Rome rust into dust unless carefully preserved. Even the most carefully forged alloys cannot resist the entropy of 12 millennia, unless the alloy itself is alien to our chemistry, or unless the sphere was deliberately engineered to endure. If the age is true, then the object was not only built by an unknown hand, it was designed to be found, as though placed in the earth like a seed waiting to germinate. The question is, why now? Why reveal itself at this precise moment in human history? The mystery deepens when we widen our lens to the sky. In July of 2025, just as the Boogosphere ignites global fascination, astronomers detect a faint object entering the solar system. At first they call it a comet, a streak of red light barely visible against the darkness, trailing gas and dust. Soon its orbit is calculated and the truth emerges. The object is not native to our system. Its path is hyperbolic, a curve that no planet or sun could hold. It comes from the interstellar dark, from beyond the walls of our celestial neighbourhood. It is named 3I-ATLAS, the third interstellar visitor ever confirmed by science, after the famous Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019. This one, however, carries mysteries of its own. Its spectrum glows red, its gases are dominated by carbon dioxide in proportions unlike most comets, and its dust scatters light in ways our models cannot explain. Some astronomers quietly suggest it could be older than the Sun, older than the Earth, perhaps older than life itself. A traveller born when the galaxy was still young, wandering for billions of years before intersecting our world. Coincidence, say the rational voices. A meaningless overlap of events, a relic on Earth and a comet in space. Two stories that do not touch. Yet the human mind is wired to weave patterns, and here the pattern is too tempting to resist. At the very moment we uncover a sphere that may be 12,000 years old, an interstellar traveller enters our sky. Two impossibilities, two mysteries, arriving in the same breath of history. The conspiracy blooms from there. What if the Boogosphere is not simply a relic but a beacon? What if it has waited 12,000 years to awaken when a signal passed nearby? A signal carried by a visitor from beyond? What if 3I-ATLAS is not a comet at all, but the messenger that sphere was built to answer? And if that is true, then we must ask a darker question. What happens when the two connect? The sphere is not silent in the public imagination. It has become the centre of a storm, an object of worship for some, a target of ridicule for others, and a black hole of secrecy for institutions that are asked to explain it. Officials release careful statements about possible hoaxes, about modern metalwork planted to fool believers, about the need for more analysis. Yet every denial seems to fuel the fire, because the timing feels scripted, because the story of the sphere aligns too perfectly with the ancient myths that speak of shining globes descending from the heavens. Consider the myths of India, where texts describe Vimanas, flying spheres of fire and metal, vehicles of gods and kings. Consider Ezekiel's wheel, a blazing mechanism in the sky, glowing with eyes all around. Consider the orbs in Sumerian tablets, spheres carried by the Anunnaki, those ancient sky people who shaped the course of humanity. For centuries these stories have been dismissed as metaphor, as imagination, yet now, sitting in Columbia, is an artifact that looks less like metaphor and more like a memory made solid. The very geometry of a sphere carries symbolism, perfection without beginning or end, eternity encoded in shape. If a civilization wanted to leave a signature, something that could not be mistaken for chance, something humans would always recognize as intentional, they would leave a sphere, perfect, incorruptible, resistant to time. It is a universal language, one that requires no translation, only recognition. At night, when the skies are clear, people in Columbia lift their eyes and see a faint red traveller crossing the heavens. 3I-ATLAS drifts silently past the orbit of Jupiter, its tail shimmering faintly in reflected sunlight. Telescopes track it. Scientists publish data about its composition, its unusual carbon dioxide to water ratio, its polarized scattering of light. They call it a comet, but with caveats, with language that admits strangeness. The more it is studied, the less it behaves like the comets we know. as though it carries a fingerprint from another corner of the galaxy. In the same nights, others gather near the Boogosphere, whispering that its hum is growing louder, that animals refuse to graze near it, that phones and radios crackle when held close. None of this is proven, yet the stories spread, and the effect is undeniable. The object feels alive, and when paired with the interstellar visitor, a picture forms in the collective imagination, a picture that terrifies and enthralls. The sphere is a receiver, ATLAS is the transmission, and humanity is the audience. History has warned us about such moments. Catastrophic floods, sudden extinctions, the collapse of civilizations that once flourished in the shadows of the Ice Age, all leave gaps that archaeology has never fully filled. What if those collapses were not natural? What if they were checkpoints in an experiment, resets designed to measure what humanity could withstand? If the sphere was placed 12,000 years ago, it may have been a marker for a cycle we do not yet understand, a cycle that might now be repeating. Imagine the implications: an artifact waiting beneath our feet for millennia, a wanderer from another star appearing in our skies, the two aligned in time, the two poised to speak across space. The possibility alone bends the spine of history, transforming our species from isolated accident into participant in a cosmic dialogue. Yet if it is a dialogue, what is the subject? What is the message? What is the intention? At this point, the story turns darker, because communication implies awareness, and awareness implies intent. If the sphere is a beacon and ATLAS is a probe, then someone built them, someone sent them, someone still exists out there who once set this experiment in motion. The question is not whether they exist, but whether they remember us, and what they expect from us after 12,000 years of silence. Official voices will deny this until the last possible moment, because acknowledging the link would shatter not just scientific certainty, but political power. The existence of a sphere that predates civilization yet carries advanced technology would undermine entire disciplines, entire governments, entire narratives of progress. The presence of an interstellar visitor that behaves like more than a comet would rip apart the illusion that Earth is unobserved, untouched, secure. Denial is easier than revelation, but denial cannot stop the march of evidence. Picture the moment of convergence. The sphere in Columbia vibrating in resonance, the interstellar object passing its closest point to the Sun, a surge of energy between them invisible to human eyes but recorded by instruments that no one is prepared to interpret. If this is a signal, it may not be words or images, but a cascade of instructions, the key unlocking functions buried inside the sphere, functions that may have been dormant for 12 millennia. Right now, as you hear these words, ATLAS is moving deeper into the solar system, its trajectory set, its speed unstoppable, its ancient memory intact. Right now, the Boogosphere sits beneath tarps and in guarded hangars, its hum debated, its symbols studied, its origin unacknowledged. Right now, humanity stands at the threshold of a revelation that could either elevate us into contact with a civilization beyond time, or expose us as subjects in an experiment we never knew had begun. The choice is not ours. The timeline is not ours. The countdown has already started. The Boogosphere waits, ATLAS approaches, and the world holds its breath. Part 2. The Sphere. That shouldn't exist. The Boogosphere should not exist, yet it does. And that is the contradiction that gnaws at every attempt to explain it away. Archaeologists remind us that 12,000 years ago, humanity lived in small groups, wandering grasslands, hunting herds of animals, and carving bones into tools. They remind us that agriculture had not yet taken root, that metallurgy was still thousands of years in the future, that the wheel itself had not been imagined. Yet here we are, staring at an artifact that seems forged with precision machining, as though it had been pulled from the assembly floor of a modern aerospace facility and dropped into the ancient world. Examine the surface, smooth as liquid mercury frozen into form, untouched by time, showing no seams, no welds, no imperfections. This is not the work of stone hammers or primitive furnaces. This is engineering at a level far beyond even the Bronze Age, let alone the Stone Age. When light hits its surface, it scatters cleanly, no pits, no scratches, no grain. Metallurgists who glance at the photographs admit they cannot say how such perfection could be achieved without advanced lathes and furnaces. Even then, the question remains, why would anyone 12,000 years ago make such a thing, and more importantly, how could they? The claims of age come from carbon analysis of organic resin connected to the sphere. Reports say the numbers fall at 12,500 years. Critics argue that resin can contaminate, that resin can be added later, that the date might not reflect the construction of the metal itself. Yet the very fact that the tests exist, the very fact that numbers have been released at all, is enough to ignite imagination. Science cannot simply laugh this away, because the evidence is physical, present, tangible. The sphere exists, it can be touched, it can be measured, and it is unlike anything else in our known archaeological record. Consider for a moment what 12,000 years means in human history. The Ice Age still gripped the northern hemisphere. Mammoths and giant sloths still roamed. The first signs of farming were just beginning in the Fertile Crescent. Civilizations as we understand them were millennia away. Yet in that same era, someone may have shaped and polished a sphere of alloy to an exactness that, even today, we struggle to replicate. The contradiction is not small, it is catastrophic. It tears a hole in our understanding of human progress. It demands that either we accept the existence of a lost civilization, with technology far beyond its time, or we accept the possibility of outside intervention. This is not the first time the story of forbidden artifacts has challenged our timelines. Ancient maps like the Piri Reis chart show coastlines that should not have been known before the age of exploration. The Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a Greek shipwreck, revealed gears so precise that historians were forced to admit the ancients understood mechanical computing. Ooparts, or out-of-place artifacts, scatter the archaeological record, from hammerheads locked in ancient stone to crystal skulls carved with impossible precision. Each one is dismissed, explained away, or locked in the vaults of museums, but together they form a pattern that suggests our history may not be as linear, as simple as the textbooks declare. The Boogosphere, however, is more radical than any of these. A crystal skull can be attributed to skilled artisans. A bronze mechanism can be placed in the context of Greek genius. A seamless metallic orb dated to the dawn of the Holocene cannot be so easily explained. To admit its authenticity would mean rewriting everything, from the story of the first farmers to the birth of metalworking itself. And here is where the theories bloom. Some claim the sphere is the last surviving artifact of a forgotten civilization, erased by the floods that ended the Ice Age. They point to ruins at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a 12,000-year-old temple complex that should not exist, yet does. They argue that humans once reached higher than we believed, and that cataclysms destroyed their knowledge, leaving only fragments behind. The Boogosphere would then be a relic, a survivor, a whisper from a time erased by fire and flood. Others are not so generous with human ability. They argue instead that the sphere is not of this world, that it was placed deliberately, not by hands of Stone Age hunters, but by visitors who arrived in ships of light. Ancient astronaut theorists call it a probe, a beacon, a device designed to endure until the age of machines returned, when we would finally be able to recognize it for what it is. If that is the case, then the discovery of the Boogosphere is not chance. It is timing, a countdown that has reached zero. Whatever the truth, the implications are enormous. If it is human, then our ancestors were capable of technology that surpasses what we thought possible, and their story has been buried. If it is alien, then Earth has been visited, monitored, perhaps even seeded, and we're only now uncovering the evidence. Either way, the sphere is not simply an object. It is a doorway, a question too large to ignore. And the deeper question lingers like a shadow. If the sphere has waited 12,000 years to be found, what else might be buried, waiting, silent beneath our feet? To grasp the weight of this enigma, consider metallurgy itself. Copper smelting appears in the archaeological record around 8,000 years ago. Bronze working emerges a little later. Iron becomes widespread only in the last 3,000 years. Yet the boogosphere shows no signs of primitive casting or hammering. If its composition is, as some preliminary reports suggest, an alloy of unusual purity with trace elements that do not match local geology, then we are dealing with metallurgy so advanced it bypasses entire ages of technological struggle. It is as though someone skipped straight from stone tools to aerospace alloys, leaving no trail in between. Skeptics argue that the sphere is a hoax, that it is modern, that someone planted it for attention. But the same skeptics have no explanation for the markings on its surface, symbols that seem to follow mathematical sequences rather than random scratches. Linguists who have seen photographs whisper that the patterns resemble scripts, yet no known alphabet matches them. Electrical engineers remark that the patterns look less like language and more like circuits, as though etched by design to carry signals. Even if the markings are random, the hypnotic geometry fuels the sense that the sphere is not simply decorative, but functional. The question of function is the darkest riddle. What does the sphere do? Is it a container, hollow with something inside, perhaps technology that has not yet been activated? Is it a transmitter, waiting to awaken and send a message? Is it a receiver, tuned to signals that humanity cannot detect? The stories of compasses spinning, of hums responding to chants, of electromagnetic interference, all suggest interaction. The sphere is not passive, it is reactive, and that simple fact transforms it from relic to device. If it is a device, then its creators must have had intent. Devices are made for purposes. A weapon, a tool, a probe, a recorder, a seed. Which one the sphere represents remains unknown, and that uncertainty gnaws at every mind that studies it. If it is a weapon, then it may hold destructive power dormant for 12,000 years. If it is a tool, then it may contain knowledge that could catapult us into an age of advancement. If it is a probe, then we are not alone, and never have been. If it is a recorder, then it may hold secrets of civilizations long gone. If it is a seed, then its purpose may only now be about to unfold. Whichever option is true, the sphere does not sit in isolation. Around the world, other artifacts have sparked similar debates. The dropper stones of China, circular discs with etched grooves that some claim tell stories of alien visitors. The Baghdad battery, a clay jar with copper and iron components that may have been used as a primitive electrical cell. The Nazca lines, vast geoglyphs visible only from the sky, their purpose still debated. Each of these artifacts is contested, argued over, ridiculed, yet none have been definitively debunked. Together they weave a tapestry of anomalies that suggest our past is stranger than our textbooks admit. The boogosphere, however, stands apart. Unlike carvings or ruins or vague inscriptions, it is an object of metal engineered with precision, impossible to dismiss as natural. Unlike the Antikythera mechanism, it does not fit neatly into human chronology. It cannot be assigned to a known culture. It simply stands outside history, silent and undeniable. This silence is the loudest thing about it. Silence in official reports, silence in scientific journals, silence in the halls of power. The military watches but does not comment. The universities analyse but do not publish. The media covers but quickly moves on. Yet in that silence the sphere waits, humming faintly, as if it knows patience is its greatest weapon. 12,000 years have passed already. It can wait a little longer. And while it waits, in the black reaches of space, an ancient traveller arcs closer to the sun. The coincidence is too sharp, too poetic, too terrifying. The discovery of a sphere that should not exist on Earth. The arrival of a visitor that should not exist in our skies, both unfolding in the same season of history. Whether human or alien, whether relic or device, the boogosphere is not alone. Its twin, its partner, its messenger may already be here, streaking through the void with a tail of gas and ice. This is the cliff where history begins to tilt. Either the sphere will remain an unsolved mystery, a curiosity dismissed by academics, or it will awaken when the time is right, when its partner in the heavens completes its journey. Humanity has stumbled onto a stage much larger than itself, a stage set long before we knew how to speak, and now the curtain is rising. If the sphere is 12,000 years old, then someone placed it here deliberately, which means someone knew we would eventually find it. If Atlas is more than a comet, then someone timed its arrival, which means someone has been watching. The story of the Booga sphere is no longer about archaeology, it is about destiny, and the question that lingers like thunder over the horizon is simple. What happens when the sphere answers the sky? In July of the year 2025, a faint red dot flickered onto the screens of astronomers at the Atlas Observatory in Chile. At first, it was only another candidate, another speck among countless others that the telescope network scanned nightly in its hunt for asteroids and comets. Yet calculations quickly revealed something extraordinary. The orbit did not close, it did not curve back toward the sun like the paths of known comets, it did not fall into the family of rocks and ice that belonged to our star. Its path was hyperbolic, a trajectory that could only mean one thing. The object had not been born in our solar system at all. It had come from the stars. The designation followed quickly, 3I-ATLAS, the third confirmed interstellar visitor after Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019. The first was a mystery shaped like a shard, tumbling oddly, accelerating as though pushed by something unseen. The second was more familiar, behaving like a comet though with unusual properties. The third, Atlas, arrived with a glow of red and a tail of gas that puzzled scientists. For only the third time in history, humanity could say with certainty that we were watching material from another solar system sweep past our own. Atlas is not large by cosmic standards, perhaps a kilometre across, perhaps less, but its age is staggering. Models suggest it may have wandered the galaxy for billions of years, ejected from its parent system during the chaos of planetary formation, drifting in the void since before Earth had even formed. Some estimates place its age older than our Sun, older even than the dust that formed our planet. In other words, when Atlas was already adrift, Earth was still a thought unborn in the galaxy's mind. Observations from the James Webb Space Telescope revealed a composition dominated by carbon dioxide, with traces of water, carbon monoxide, and other volatiles. The ratio of carbon dioxide to water was unusual, far higher than in most comets we have studied. Its coma, the glowing envelope of gas surrounding it, shimmered in infrared, showing properties that did not fit cleanly with our models. In ultraviolet light, emission of hydroxyl radicals suggested activity at distances where comets are usually dormant. Even the way its dust scattered light confused astronomers, showing a deep, narrow polarization curve not seen in most solar system comets. Each anomaly might have an explanation, but together they built an impression of something foreign, something not simply a comet, but a messenger from an entirely different set of rules. Its colour was red, yet not uniformly, showing slopes across wavelengths that hinted at grain sizes and ice compositions unfamiliar to us. Its behaviour seemed to shift as though its skin was layered with materials we did not expect. Even with the best instruments humanity had ever built, Atlas remained enigmatic, as though it carried secrets carefully wrapped against our scrutiny. The public, of course, heard only fragments of this. Headlines called it an alien visitor, a piece of another world, a frozen relic from the galaxy. Rumours spread faster than data, and once again the pattern emerged. Just as scientists rushed to study Atlas, conspiracies began to grow around it. Was it truly natural, or was it artificial? Could it be a probe, a vessel, a fragment of technology designed to look like a comet but functioning as something else? The idea may sound wild, yet it is not entirely without precedent. Avi Loeb, a Harvard astrophysicist, famously argued that Oumuamua, the first interstellar visitor, could have been an artificial probe, thin like a light sail, pushed by radiation pressure. His view was controversial, yet it forced the scientific community to grapple with the possibility that interstellar objects might sometimes be more than rocks. If Oumuamua could be artificial, why not Atlas? This possibility is where the story collides with the boogosphere, because if Atlas is more than a comet, if it is artificial, if it carries intent, then its arrival at the very moment the boogosphere is unearthed cannot be coincidence. The two mysteries begin to echo each other, one on Earth, one in the heavens, as though they were chapters in the same narrative. The sphere is the receiver, the orb in the sky is the transmitter, and humanity is caught in the crossfire of a dialogue that began long before we were born. Imagine looking through a telescope at Atlas, its red glow shimmering, its gases forming a thin veil across billions of kilometers. Imagine knowing that what you're seeing is older than Earth, a survivor from a different star, a wanderer carrying information from an alien system. Now imagine pairing that with a sphere dug from the soil of Columbia, a relic said to be 12,000 years old, etched with strange symbols, humming to ancient chants. One is proof of the cosmos beyond, the other is proof of something impossible within. Together they are not random, they are deliberate. They're pieces of a puzzle that someone has left for us to assemble. The question is, assemble into what? When the discovery was announced, the world barely noticed. News outlets gave it a passing mention, another comet, another icy body, another curiosity for scientists. Yet behind the scenes, astronomers were wide awake, because 3I-ATLAS was not just another comet, it was something altogether stranger. Unlike Oumuamua, which passed quickly and silently, unlike Borisov, which was more easily classified as a comet, Atlas presented a hybrid identity. It behaved like a comet, yet not quite like one, a trickster wearing a mask. The James Webb Space Telescope trained its eyes on it, peeling away layers of light across the infrared spectrum. What it found was unsettling. The gases venting from Atlas did not fit the neat categories built from centuries of comet studies. Its carbon dioxide was abundant, far more than water, flipping the usual ratio. This meant either Atlas formed in conditions utterly different from our solar system, or it carried a chemistry engineered for resilience. In other words, either alien geology or alien intent. Ground-based telescopes added more layers of confusion. Its dust grains scattered light in ways that defied expectation, producing a sharp polarization signal that did not match known comets. Some grains seemed too small, others too large, the distribution uneven, as if designed rather than random. Its coma glowed faintly red, yet the slope of that red varied with wavelength, producing colours that were not natural to typical cometary ice. The more scientists studied it, the more it slipped away from them, refusing to fit any model, refusing to be pinned down. The whispers began quickly. Scientists who dared to speculate suggested that Atlas might not be a natural object at all, but a vessel of some kind cloaked in ice and dust. A probe disguised as a comet, a wanderer that could slip unnoticed into foreign systems, gathering information, transmitting data, continuing on. The idea echoed Loeb's theory of Oumuamua, the possibility that interstellar space might be filled with technological debris, fragments of civilizations we have never met. If this sounds like science fiction, remember that for decades humanity has already dreamed of doing the same. Proposals for Bracewell probes, autonomous machines launched into the galaxy to wait for intelligent civilizations, have circulated in scientific journals since the 1960s. These probes would not return to Earth. They would linger in foreign systems, observing, waiting, perhaps even intervening. If we can imagine such things, why not others older, wiser, and far more advanced? Now imagine the timeline. 12,000 years ago, according to reports, the boogosphere was placed in the soil of Columbia. At the same time, or perhaps long before, Atlas was already adrift, wandering the galaxy, waiting for its path to intersect ours. And now, in the year 2025, the two mysteries surface together, as if an alarm has gone off, as if a clock set millennia ago has struck its hour. The world of official science says coincidence. The world of conspiracy says design. And between those two poles stretches the void of uncertainty, a void that humanity cannot help but fill with imagination. Picture what happens next. Atlas continues its arc, drawing closer to the inner solar system. Each day its coma grows brighter, its gases vent more intensely, its tail lengthens. Instruments on Earth track it. But in those streams of gas, in those ratios of molecules, could there be information? Could patterns of emission be signals, deliberately encoded? To us it looks like chemistry, but to another eye it could be language. The boogosphere, humming faintly, vibrating at frequencies we do not yet understand, could be the receiver, the partner that completes the dialogue. Even more chilling is the possibility that Atlas is not silent at all. Radio telescopes have scanned interstellar objects before, searching for unusual emissions, but what if its signals are not in radio, not in any frequency we monitor? What if the sphere itself is the only antenna tuned to hear it? The connection would then be invisible to us, yet active, pulsing, alive. And consider the symbolism. An orb buried in the earth, an orb drifting in the heavens, one asleep in soil, the other awake in space, both spherical, both carrying mysteries, both arriving in our awareness in the same moment. To call this coincidence is easy, but to feel it is something else entirely. It feels scripted, orchestrated, designed to shock us awake. As Atlas pushes past the orbit of Mars, growing brighter, the tension grows. Astronomers release more data, yet each release contains caveats, contradictions, anomalies. Journalists begin to speculate openly, while forums and podcasts explode with theories. Governments say little, but rumours leak of military observatories devoting disproportionate resources to watching Atlas. If it is only a comet, why the secrecy? Why the urgency? Why the silence? Meanwhile, the sphere in Columbia is no longer a local curiosity. It has become a guarded artifact, surrounded by tarps, fences, and men who do not answer questions. Some claim it has been moved to a secure facility, others say it remains hidden in plain sight. Eyewitnesses continue to report strange effects, animals shying away, electronics failing, vibrations that seem to pulse in rhythm with something distant. Whether true or false, these stories amplify the sense that the earthbound orb and the interstellar visitor are not strangers, but family. The pattern now feels undeniable. The two objects mirror each other. One ancient yet buried, one ancient yet wandering, one discovered by accident, the other by design. The human mind leaps to the conclusion that they are connected, and once that connection is made, it cannot be undone. Every new detail about Atlas feeds speculation about the sphere, and every rumour about the sphere bleeds into interpretations of Atlas. Two mysteries orbiting each other, drawing humanity into their gravity. As the weeks pass, the moment of closest approach approaches, a countdown written in orbital mechanics unstoppable, precise. Atlas will sweep past the sun, flare in brightness, and then drift away forever, unless something intervenes. The boogosphere will either remain silent or awaken. The possibility that the two are destined to connect grows more intoxicating with every passing night. And here is the cliffhanger. What if the connection is not passive? What if Atlas is not here simply to pass by? What if it is here to trigger the sphere, to awaken it, to activate something that has been sleeping for 12,000 years? The Earth may not simply be observing an interstellar visitor. The Earth may be about to participate in a ritual written before humanity was born. Right now, the countdown ticks. Atlas drifts closer, the sphere hums in silence, and humanity is caught in the space between. Part 4. The Signal and the Sphere. The story no longer feels like two mysteries running in parallel. It feels like a single thread weaving across time and space. A buried sphere on Earth, a wandering orb in the heavens, both revealing themselves in the same season, both carrying anomalies that refuse explanation. The human mind is built to search for patterns, yet this pattern feels as if it has been placed deliberately, waiting for us to notice. The question is not whether they are connected, but how and for what purpose. The whispers begin in scientific circles, then spread to podcasts, late-night radio, and anonymous forums. If the boogosphere is 12,000 years old, And if Atlas is billions of years old, then perhaps the sphere was left here to be awakened by the passage of such a traveller. In that scenario, Atlas is not merely a comet, it is the trigger, the signal, the messenger carrying the spark that will activate a dormant device. The idea sounds like fiction, yet it aligns with a terrifying logic. If a civilization wanted to monitor a planet over long spans of time, they could leave an artifact on the surface, then send a roaming probe to pass by after millennia, transmitting data, activating functions, or resetting experiments. This is the Bracewell concept taken to its extreme. A probe launched by one civilization waits quietly until it is near another world, then transmits a message. But what if the message cannot be heard by human technology? What if the message can only be received by a device already placed on that planet, tuned to a frequency or a form of communication we cannot detect? The Boogosphere could be that receiver, waiting in silence for 12,000 years until the day its counterpart drifted close enough to whisper across the void. Reports begin to surface of unusual readings in Columbia. Amateur investigators claim spikes in electromagnetic noise near the sphere, strange bursts that do not match local interference. Farmers say radios crackle at night, their voices buried in static that pulses like a heartbeat. Theories multiply, suggesting that Atlas has already begun transmitting, that the sphere has already begun to respond. If true, then we are not waiting for contact. We are already in the middle of it, unaware of what information is being exchanged above our heads and beneath our feet. Governments deny everything, but denial only fuels suspicion. Leaked images of transport trucks, military guards, and sealed hangars appear online, fueling the belief that the sphere has been moved to a secure facility. Officials say nothing, but silence is louder than words. Why would a metallic ball of no importance be treated like a weapon? Why would it vanish under armed escort? Why would scientists who once spoke openly about it suddenly refuse to comment? The answer offered by conspiracy is simple, because they know. They know the sphere is not inert, they know the connection is real, and they know the implications are too dangerous to reveal. Meanwhile, Atlas brightens in the night sky. Its tail lengthens, its spectrum shifts, and astronomers quietly admit that it continues to defy models. Some speak of sublimation of exotic ices, others of dust grains that reflect in ways unknown. Yet in whispers, a few admit the possibility that they are watching more than geology, that they are watching technology disguised as geology. The comet is not simply burning, it is transmitting, every shift in light a symbol, every ratio a code. If this is true, then the Boogosphere may be decoding it even now. What data it contains, what instructions it holds, we cannot know. But the imagination leaps forward. The sphere could awaken ancient machinery, perhaps hidden deep underground. It could unlock knowledge written in mathematics older than our species. It could even release signals of its own, reaching not just to Atlas but beyond, to others waiting further in the dark. Humanity could already be inside a network we do not understand, a network that has existed since before we learned to write. The terror lies not only in the possibility of communication, but in the possibility of intent. Communication implies purpose. If the sphere was placed to watch, then who is the watcher? If the sphere was placed to guide, then what is the destination? If the sphere was placed to test, then what is the measure of success or failure? A countdown looms over every theory. 12,000 years of silence, and now, suddenly, activity. Why now, and what comes next? Imagine a signal passing invisibly through the air, a transmission too subtle for human instruments, too alien for our receivers, but perfectly tuned for the Boogosphere. Imagine the orb absorbing the information, storing it, transforming it, waiting for the moment it is full. What would happen then? Would it open, split like a seed pod, reveal technology locked away since the Ice Age? Would it project images, a message from the builders? Would it simply remain silent, yet shift the balance of fields and forces around it, altering Earth itself? The parallels are too sharp to ignore. Atlas in the sky, the sphere in the soil, both glowing, both red and metallic. both carrying an aura of impossible age. Together they form a pair, a circuit, a dialogue. And if this is a dialogue, then we are not its initiators. We are its subjects. The conversation has already been underway for longer than we can imagine, and only now are we aware of it. The cliff approaches. Atlas will soon reach its perihelion, its closest pass to the sun, the point at which it will flare most brightly, the point at which any transmission would be strongest. The boogosphere, guarded in secrecy, waits like a coiled spring. What happens when the interstellar traveller reaches its brightest moment? What happens when the energy peaks? What happens when the sphere responds? The countdown is written in the stars, and the final signal has not yet been sent. The more closely we look, the more the parallels seem ancient, as if humanity has already seen this before, only through the distorted glass of myth. The Sumerians carved tablets speaking of the Anunnaki who descended from the heavens, carrying spheres of light. The Mayan codices tell of glowing orbs that dictated calendars, shaping cycles of time. The Book of Ezekiel describes a wheel within a wheel, full of eyes, spinning in the sky with a sound like rushing waters. Each of these stories has long been explained as vision, metaphor, imagination. Yet when placed beside the boogosphere and Atlas, they begin to sound less like myths and more like memories. Perhaps humanity has witnessed this cycle before, long ago, and our ancestors, unable to explain it, recorded it in symbols of gods and fire. If that is the case, then the boogosphere may not be the only one. What if there are others, hidden in deserts, buried under ice, lying at the bottom of oceans? What if Earth itself has been seeded with such devices, each one a node in a planetary network designed to wake only when the sky delivers the right signal? The thought is chilling, for it means we may only have found the first, while countless others sleep beneath our feet, waiting. Scientists bound by their models cannot say such things aloud, yet in private conversations some admit their discomfort. The ratios of gases venting from Atlas are too unusual, the polarization of its light too sharp, the persistence of its activity too strange. They can explain each anomaly with stretched theories, but taken together, the object resists natural classification. Some whisper that they are watching technology, not geology, and that to admit it would change everything. Governments, meanwhile, maintain silence. The artifact in Columbia is guarded, sealed away, no official information released. Yet satellites overhead show unusual movements, convoys under cover of night, airlifts that carry containers away from the jungle. The cover story is thin, the truth obvious. Someone is preparing, someone is testing, someone is waiting for the moment of alignment. And the public, left with fragments and rumours, begins to weave its own story. Online communities claim that frequencies in shortwave bands have been fluctuating in patterns that resemble coded messages. Amateur radio operators report bursts of static at the same time as Atlas brightens in the sky. Some say these bursts align with spikes of electromagnetic interference in Columbia. None of this is proven, but the pattern once seen cannot be unseen. The signal is here, the receiver is here, the exchange is happening. What remains unknown is the meaning. Is the signal a greeting, a warning, an instruction, or a command? Is the sphere listening, or is it responding? If it responds, then to whom? To Atlas, or to something even farther beyond, watching from a distance we cannot imagine? The night of perihelion draws closer. Astronomers publish schedules, dates, charts of brightness. To them it is a scientific opportunity, a chance to study an interstellar object at its most active. To those who believe in the connection, it is something far more profound. It is the moment the conversation will peak, the moment the signal will be strongest, the moment the sphere may finally awaken. And then comes the thought no one wants to speak. What if awakening is not benign? What if the sphere was placed not to enlighten us, but to control us, to judge us, to reset us? What if the last 12,000 years have been a test, and the signal is the moment the exam is graded? Civilizations before us may have failed, washed away in floods and fire, their ruins buried. We may be next, unless we prove ourselves ready. Right now the Earth turns beneath the stars. Right now Atlas glows faintly in the void. Right now the sphere sits in silence, guarded yet restless. The connection may already be alive, invisible to our instruments, inaudible to our ears, yet blazing with clarity to machines not of our design. When the signal peaks, something will change. Whether we are ready or not, whether we understand or not, the conversation will continue and the sphere will answer. Part 5. Echoes of an older world. If the boogosphere is real, if its age is true, then it does not belong to our timeline. It belongs to another world, a world erased. That world was not one of smartphones and satellites, nor one of bronze and iron. It was a world balanced on the knife edge between the end of the Ice Age and the beginning of civilization. A world where glaciers still loomed on the horizon, where seas were lower and vast coastlines stretched where oceans now churn. It was a world where myths were born, myths that whisper of cataclysm and gods descending from the sky. 12,000 years ago was the Younger Dryas, a period of sudden and violent climate change. Something struck the Earth, perhaps fragments of a comet, perhaps forces we still do not understand, and the world froze again after beginning to thaw. Species perished, landscapes shattered, seas rose in floods that drowned coastlines. It was a cataclysm burned into memory, passed down as stories of fire from the heavens and waters that swallowed cities. Almost every ancient culture remembers it. The Sumerians spoke of Zusudra, surviving a flood sent by the gods. The Hebrews told of Noah, the Mesopotamians of Utnapishtim, the mire of waters that reset the world. If the boogosphere was placed in that epoch, then perhaps it was meant to survive that cataclysm, a seed waiting in the soil while ice and fire swept the earth. When humanity emerged again, weaker, scattered, stripped of whatever knowledge it once held, the sphere remained, silent and patient. That is why it gleams today, untouched, because it was built to endure the resets that shatter civilizations. There are hints of that lost world still visible. In Turkey, Göbekli Tepe rises from the dust, a temple complex 12,000 years old, built with stone pillars carved in ways no hunter-gatherers should have known. It appears suddenly with no clear precursors, as if knowledge arrived from nowhere. Scholars debate endlessly, but the simplest answer is that it is a remnant of something older, a flicker of memory from a vanished people. Plato spoke of Atlantis, a civilization destroyed in a single day and night of disaster, swallowed by the sea. Dismissed as legend, yet new evidence of massive floods and submerged ruins suggests the story may hold a core of truth. The echoes ripple across every culture. The Vedas of India describe Vimanas, flying craft shaped like spheres and wheels, weapons that glowed like suns. The Dogon tribe of Africa speak of knowledge given to them by beings from the star Sirius. The Egyptians told of Zep Tepi, the first time, when gods ruled before humans. Even the Bible describes the sons of God who descended to earth, taking wives among mortals, producing giants. These are not isolated myths. They are a chorus of memories, distorted but insistent, all pointing to encounters with something not entirely human. If we read these myths as history rather than fantasy, then the pattern becomes clear. Visitors came, they left knowledge, they left devastation, and they left artifacts. The boogosphere may be one of those artifacts, buried as a marker of the last encounter, and Atlas, wandering through the sky, may be the herald of the next. The myths of gods descending in fire could have been descriptions of interstellar objects flaring in the atmosphere, of probes communicating with their receivers. Our ancestors did not have the language of science, so they clothed these events in the language of divinity. What we call a probe, they called a god. What we call a transmission, they called a command. Consider the possibility that humanity has already faced this cycle more than once. The Younger Dryas event may have been one test. Atlantis may have been one casualty. Göbekli Tepe may have been one survivor. Now, 12,000 years later, the cycle returns, the sphere awakens, the sky sends its messenger, and humanity once again stands before the same riddle. Will we be judged worthy of contact, or will we be reset like those before us? The weight of that possibility is almost unbearable. We are accustomed to thinking of ourselves as the pinnacle of human history, the most advanced, the final step of a long climb. Yet what if we are not the first? What if others rose before us, only to fall, their memories fossilized as myths, their technologies buried beneath oceans, their artifacts left as silent markers? The Boogosphere could be the proof, the smoking gun that shows we are not unique, not original, not alone. The deeper terror is this. If the cycle has played out before, then the sphere is not simply a relic, it is a mechanism in the pattern. It may not be here for us, it may be here for them, those who placed it, those who sent ATLAS, those who are still out there, waiting. Right now, humanity may be reenacting a story already written, a story our ancestors tried to warn us about through myth and monument, a story we ignored until the evidence rose again from the soil and descended again from the stars. The echoes of an older world are no longer whispers, they are thunder rolling across time. The past is returning, and with it comes a reckoning we may not survive. The more we examine global myth, the more the repetition feels deliberate, as if scattered cultures across continents were recording the same memory in different tongues. The Hopi speak of worlds that came before, destroyed one after another, until ours emerged as the fourth, fragile and temporary. The Norse told of Ragnarok, cycles of destruction and rebirth written into the bones of time. The Aztecs believed in suns that rose and fell, each age ending in disaster, each new sun marking a reset. These stories are not simply tales of morality, they are survival manuals written in metaphor, warning future generations that the world has been reset before, and it can be reset again. Geology whispers the same warning. Layers of black mats rich with platinum and nanodiamonds appear across continents, markers of the Younger Dryas impact theory, evidence of a cosmic strike 12,000 years ago that reshaped the climate. Meltwater pulses from collapsing ice sheets raise seas hundreds of feet, drowning coastal settlements and erasing entire cultures. Archaeology struggles to explain the sudden disappearance of megafauna, the abrupt end of flourishing human settlements, the simultaneous appearance of mythic flood stories across the globe. Science and myth align, pointing to a catastrophe remembered in every tongue. If the Boogosphere is genuine, then it fits seamlessly into this pattern. It is the survivor, the artifact that withstood fire, ice and flood, waiting for the day we would dig it up. Its perfect construction was not only advanced, it was purposeful, built to endure what destroyed everything else. That endurance is itself a message. Whoever placed it knew Earth would change, new seas would rise, new civilizations would fall, and yet they intended the sphere to remain, which means they intended us to find it. The idea is staggering. Imagine civilizations before us that reached heights we cannot yet grasp, building monuments now lost beneath waves, building technologies now decayed, and leaving behind only markers like this. Imagine that the myths of gods were garbled descriptions of those who guided, perhaps even manipulated, the course of human evolution. Imagine that our climb to modernity has not been solitary but supervised, nudged forward, corrected when it faltered. The Boogosphere becomes less an artifact and more a signature, a note left behind by an architect who expected us to awaken, who knew we would eventually reach a point where we could recognize it. The myths are not fantasy, they're echoes of encounters with these architects, encounters that shaped who we are. And now, as Atlas drifts across our sky, the cycle repeats. Which leaves a final question pressing against the heart of Part 5. If civilizations before us encountered the same pattern and did not survive, then what fate awaits us now? Are we the next to be judged, the next to be reset, the next to be remembered only as myth by a future species? Or are we the first to be ready, the first to step through the doorway the architects left open? Right now the echoes grow louder. The sphere gleams in secrecy, Atlas brightens in the sky, and the myths of the past feel less like stories and more like warnings. The ancient world has spoken, but what it has said is unclear. The only certainty is that the cycle has begun again, and this time we are inside it. The past is not finished with us. It is calling back through the soil and through the stars, and soon we will hear its voice. Part 6. The Architects of Silence. The silence surrounding the Boogosphere and Atlas may not be the silence of absence, but the silence of intent. Silence can be more powerful than noise. Silence can be the strategy of watchers who do not wish to reveal themselves until the moment is right. Silence can be the weight of a civilization so far beyond us that our cries and questions are nothing more than whispers in a storm. If the Boogosphere is a receiver, if Atlas is a messenger, then the architects behind them are not human, and perhaps not even near. They are older than the pyramids, older than humanity, older perhaps than our sun. They're a civilization that seeded devices across the galaxy, hidden in soil, buried in oceans, resting on moons, waiting in silence for the moment of activation. The Boogosphere may not be unique. It may simply be our node in a network, one of countless silent stations scattered across living worlds. Imagine such a civilization. While our species was carving tools from stone, they were building machines to last billions of years. While we struggled to master fire, they were scattering probes disguised as comets. Probes that could wander the stars and deliver signals to hidden receivers. They would not need to maintain constant presence. They would only need to establish cycles, resets, moments of contact. They could step away for millennia, confident their devices would endure. In the language of astronomy, we call them Type 3 civilizations, societies capable of harnessing the power of entire galaxies. In the language of conspiracy, we call them gods. But gods are only civilizations so advanced that their science appears as magic to us. Arthur Clarke said it best. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. The Boogosphere is our first taste of that indistinguishability. What purpose would such architects have? Some suggest curiosity, an endless hunger to observe the rise of intelligence across the stars. Others suggest control, a gardener's hand pruning species that grow too fast or in the wrong direction. A darker view suggests exploitation, harvesting planets not for contact but for resources, for energy, for genetic material. If that is the case, then silence is not benevolent, it is predatory. The architects would not reveal themselves because prey should never see the hunter's eyes. There is precedent in our own behavior. When we study animals, we often do so silently, observing without interfering, tagging them with devices that transmit data, altering their environments to test reactions. What if humanity is being treated the same way? The Boogosphere is the tag, Atlas is the check-in, and we are the experiment. And yet, silence can also be protective. A civilization that knows the galaxy is dangerous might choose to remain hidden, leaving behind only silent devices to monitor worlds. They would not broadcast loudly, they would whisper in code, they would wait until species matured before revealing themselves. In this scenario, the Boogosphere is less a trap and more a message in a bottle, proof that we are not alone, meant to awaken only when we are capable of understanding. But are we capable? Humanity is fractured, distracted, fighting itself while the cosmos closes in. Perhaps the architects anticipated this. Perhaps that is part of the test. Can we unify under pressure? Can we interpret signals without tearing each other apart? Can we face a truth that shatters religions and governments alike? The silence grows heavier when we consider what governments might already know. Whispers suggest that military intelligence agencies have studied objects like the Boogosphere before, that crash retrieval programs have recovered technology far beyond human design. If this is true, then the architects may have already been acknowledged in secret. Perhaps deals were struck. Perhaps warnings were received. Perhaps even communication has already occurred, hidden from the public under layers of silence. Atlas, however, is not something that can be hidden. Its trajectory is written across the sky for all to see. When it brightens, when it passes closest to the sun, the whole world will witness it. That visibility makes the silence even more suspicious. If it were only a comet, why guard information? Why downplay anomalies? Why treat it as a security concern? The architects may be silent, but their design is not. It is speaking now, through the coincidence of discovery, through the anomalies that resist explanation, through the weight of myths that echo across cultures. The Bugosphere is not an isolated puzzle. It is part of a structure so vast it stretches across time and galaxies. We are only now beginning to glimpse its outline. The fear is not simply that the architects exist, but that they are not alone. If one civilization can scatter silent devices across the stars, then surely others can too. What if the sphere and Atlas are not the work of benevolent watchers, but of competing powers, rival architects whose games play out on worlds like ours? Humanity could be caught in a struggle older than Earth, a struggle we cannot see, a struggle in which we are nothing more than pieces. The silence then becomes even darker, not the silence of patience, but the silence of war. A war fought in shadows across galaxies, with devices like the Bugosphere serving as markers, receivers, weapons, or seeds. If that is the truth, then the question is not whether we will make contact, but whether we will survive it. Right now, the silence endures. The sphere hums faintly in guarded secrecy. Atlas glows faintly in the night sky, and humanity stands ignorant beneath the weight of an ancient design. The architects have not spoken, but their devices already have. The next move is not ours. If the architects exist, then the Earth itself may already be their archive. The myths of gods descending could have been nothing more than routine visits, inspections carried out by probes that slipped in and out of the atmosphere, their presence translated by terrified eyes into stories of flaming wheels and thundering chariots. The flood myths could have been resets, disasters deliberately triggered to erase civilizations that failed their tests. Even the sudden bursts of technological leaps in our own history may not be accidents, but injections of knowledge at moments chosen by the watchers. Look at the strange leaps that defy smooth evolution. Göbekli Tepe appears with no clear predecessors, as if the idea of monumental architecture arrived from nowhere. The Sumerians invented writing, astronomy, and complex law seemingly overnight, as if knowledge was granted fully formed. The Egyptian pyramids rise with precision and alignment still debated. Then gaps follow, dark ages where progress stalls, as if the architects pulled back, watching from silence until conditions suited them again. The silence is not absence, it is orchestration. The architects may not speak because their devices already do the speaking. The Bugosphere may carry within it instructions, not for us, but for other machines buried elsewhere. When Atlas drifts near, it may broadcast an activation code, awakening those machines, connecting them into a network. To human eyes, the world looks the same, but beneath the soil, deep within mountains, hidden under seas, the machines stir. If such a network exists, then humanity has never been alone, never been sovereign, never been the masters of its own fate. We may be a colony under silent supervision, raised in a controlled environment, guided along paths we do not see. The myths of gods would then be the myths of wardens, guardians, or even experimenters, whose silence is the surest proof of their control. This realization terrifies those who sense it. If the sphere is truly a receiver, then the message has already begun to flow. It may be data about our planet, measurements of atmosphere, counts of population, records of war and peace, transmitted back across the void. Or it may be instructions, written in a language we cannot decode, seeding into the sphere functions that could alter the balance of our world. The silence hides not emptiness, but communication, not absence, but presence, not ignorance, but design. And then there is the possibility that chills the blood. The architects may not be benevolent nor curious, nor even indifferent. They may be predators, using silence as camouflage, using spheres as lures, using comets as carriers. We may not be the audience of their communication. We may be the prey. The myths of sacrifice, of humans offered to gods, may not be metaphor at all, but faint memories of being harvested in cycles long forgotten. The silence would then be the silence of the hunter, crouched in shadows, waiting for the moment to strike. Yet hope clings stubbornly. If the architects are gardeners rather than predators, then perhaps the sphere is not a trap but a key. A key to knowledge that will vault us forward, a key to communication with civilizations older and wiser than we can imagine. If we can prove ourselves worthy, if we can survive the tests, then the silence may finally break into voice. The architects may reveal themselves not as destroyers, but as teachers. Humanity may yet rise into the galactic stage. Right now, the balance hangs unseen. The sphere in Columbia vibrates in its secrecy. Atlas glows brighter in the heavens, and the silence of the architects grows heavier by the day. Whether that silence hides salvation or extinction, we cannot yet know. The world looks to science for certainty, for the comfort of equations and models that explain away the chaos of the unknown. Yet science is only as strong as its data, and when the data itself refuses to cooperate, the system begins to crack. That is exactly what has happened with the Boogosphere and 3I-ATLAS. The official explanations unravel the more closely they are examined, leaving contradictions that no peer review can erase. Archaeologists insist that a seamless metallic sphere cannot be 12,000 years old, that metallurgy of such precision belongs only to the modern age. They argue hoax, misidentification, modern contamination, yet they cannot explain the resin tested at the University of Georgia's isotope lab, carbon dated to the end of the last ice age. They cannot explain the witnesses who describe compass needles spinning, soil turning sterile, or vibrations that pulse in response to sound. They dismiss the claims, but dismissal is not explanation. The artifact remains tangible and stubborn, refusing to vanish into theory. Astronomers face the same collapse with Atlas. They classify it as a comet, yet it does not behave like one. Its coma erupts with carbon dioxide at distances where water should dominate. Its polarization signature is sharper than any known in our system. Its colors do not match familiar patterns of ice and dust. Each anomaly can be stretched into an explanation. Exotic ices, unusual grain distributions, rare conditions. But when combined, they strain credibility. The object resists the boxes science tries to place it in. When science fails, the void does not remain empty. It fills with speculation. Theories of ancient aliens surge into the mainstream. Podcasts and forums echo with claims that the sphere and Atlas are deliberately connected. Governments, instead of dispelling the rumours with transparent data, seal their lips tighter, fueling suspicion. Why surround a harmless ball of metal with armed guards? Why restrict access to an object that should be easy to debunk? Why devote military observatories to monitoring a comet that should pose no threat? The contradictions deepen. Leaked documents hint at classified meetings linking the artifact and the interstellar visitor. Anonymous insiders whisper of energy signatures not yet disclosed to the public. When pressed, officials retreat into silence, claiming ignorance or national security. The very refusal to engage becomes evidence of concealment. The public begins to fracture. One camp clings to scientific orthodoxy, insisting all anomalies have natural explanations, that the sphere is a modern hoax, that Atlas is an unusual but natural comet. The other camp sees conspiracy in every silence, confirmation in every denial, evidence in every rumour. The divide grows sharper, fueled by the knowledge that both camps cannot be right, and that the truth, whichever way it falls, will change everything. Science thrives on repeatability, on the ability to measure, test, and verify. But the Boogosphere is locked away, untouchable, hidden from independent investigation. Atlas drifts across the sky, yet access to high-resolution data is limited to a handful of elite observatories. In both cases, the information bottleneck means science cannot function properly. Without open access, the void expands and the breakdown accelerates. And in that breakdown, darker theories emerge. Some whisper that the Boogosphere is not unique, that governments have found others in deserts, mountains, and ocean trenches. Some claim Atlas is not the first interstellar probe to pass, only the first they admitted publicly. Some even suggest that Oumuamua was intercepted, diverted, perhaps even captured, its secrets hidden away from the world. Each rumour adds fuel, each contradiction deepens the collapse. This is where science bends into something it was never meant to be. Instead of clarity, it becomes theatre, a stage where officials juggle narratives to maintain control. The truth of the artifact and the truth of the comet are too dangerous to reveal, yet too obvious to ignore. The more tightly the story is held, the more violently it leaks through cracks. Right now, the contradictions pile higher. An artifact that cannot be yet is. A comet that should behave one way yet does not. Governments that should clarify yet conceal. Science that should explain yet falters. The breakdown is no longer a possibility, it is the reality. The framework of certainty is failing, and in its ruin something older, stranger, and far more dangerous waits. The cracks in the wall of certainty begin as hairline fractures, almost invisible, yet once you see them you cannot unsee them. The boogosphere should have been dismissed within days. The experts should have stepped forward, tested it publicly, and shown the world that it was a clever hoax or a modern forgery. That is how science should work, in the light of transparency. But the light never came. Instead, the artifact vanished behind security fences, access was restricted, and only fragments of information trickled out, filtered through whispers and leaks. That secrecy is poison to science, and poison to public trust. The longer the silence lasted, the stronger the story grew, and the harder it became to contain. Scientists said with certainty that the sphere could not be 12,000 years old, that no culture of that era had metallurgy capable of creating such perfection. But then came the rumours of carbon dating, of resin attached to the sphere tested by respected labs, with the results pointing back to the Younger Dryas, that violent chapter of climate upheaval when civilizations could have been drowned. The scientists countered that the resin could be contaminated, that the test proved nothing about the metal itself. But the contradiction was fatal, because once numbers exist, once they circulate, silence is no longer enough. People began to ask the obvious question, if the test meant nothing, why not repeat it openly? Why not prove it wrong in the light of day? The refusal to do so looked less like caution and more like fear. Astronomy faced the same storm with 3I-ATLAS. Observers first declared it a comet, but comets follow rules, and Atlas broke them. Its coma bloomed too far from the sun, driven not by water ice, but by a dominance of carbon dioxide that seemed alien compared to the comets of our system. Its polarization signal was sharper, stranger, unlike the curves we know. Its colour slope shifted in ways that hinted at unfamiliar chemistry. Each anomaly could be explained away individually. Scientists stretched models, invoked exotic ices, rare processes, unique grains. But together the anomalies formed a picture that refused to behave. The comet classification began to look like a costume, a disguise worn to preserve the comfort of natural categories. When science cannot explain, it usually admits ignorance, that humility is its strength. But here the humility was absent. Instead of admitting what they did not know, officials wrapped their silence in authority, presenting Atlas as ordinary, insisting the boogosphere was irrelevant, even as their own data contradicted them. That refusal to admit mystery became the spark that lit the fire of conspiracy. And conspiracy spreads faster than data. Within weeks, online forums erupted with theories that the boogosphere and Atlas were linked. Podcasts spoke of the sphere as a receiver and Atlas as its transmitter. Anonymous insiders claimed that unusual energy readings had already been recorded in Colombia. Grainy videos appeared showing guards moving containers under tarps, trucks rolling through jungle roads in the night, helicopters lifting crates. Each piece may have been fake, but they added to the weight of suspicion, and suspicion is more powerful than certainty. The breakdown extended beyond science into politics. Leaders were asked for statements, yet their words were vague, evasive, and hesitant. They spoke of routine monitoring, of scientific curiosity, of no reason for alarm. But their actions betrayed them. Military satellites were repositioned to watch Atlas. Flights of aircraft patrolled Colombian skies. Budgets for classified programs swelled without explanation. The public saw the contradiction, and once again silence did not soothe, it amplified. Religions seized the moment. Preachers proclaimed the Boogosphere a divine artifact, proof that prophecies were true, that judgment was near. Ancient texts were quoted in sermons, Ezekiel's wheels, the Hindu Vimanas, the Book of Revelation's trumpets in the sky. In temples and churches, the discovery was reframed not as archaeology but as apocalypse. Millions listened, because when science falters, faith fills the vacuum. The breakdown of authority in one domain becomes fuel for authority in another. Academia itself began to split. Some scholars tried to protect the orthodoxy, writing papers that downplayed anomalies, that treated Atlas as unusual but natural, that dismissed the Boogosphere as a hoax not worth studying. Others whispered in private that the anomalies were real, that the questions could not be ignored, that their own curiosity was burning holes in their silence. Yet none dared to publish openly. Fear of ridicule, fear of funding cuts, fear of being branded fringe kept them quiet. The result was paralysis, a system designed to investigate truth unable to move because the truth threatened its very structure. History shows this is not new. When the first reports of meteorites emerged, scientists mocked them, declaring that stones could not fall from the sky because the heavens were perfect and unchanging. Farmers who found them were laughed at, their stories dismissed as superstition. Only when fragments were undeniable did science pivot, pretending it had always been open to the idea. The same pattern repeats now. The Boogosphere is dismissed, until perhaps it cannot be. Atlas is explained away, until its strangeness is undeniable, and in that gap between denial and admission, chaos grows. The chaos is not confined to laboratories and parliaments. It lives in living rooms, in glowing screens, in the restless eyes of ordinary people. The question spreads like a virus, whispered in bars, debated in classrooms, shouted in protests. If the sphere is real, what does it mean? If Atlas is more than a comet, who sent it? If governments lie, what are they hiding? Certainty dissolves, replaced by suspicion, and suspicion is the seed of unrest. The world divides into camps. Some cling harder to science, declaring every anomaly must have a natural explanation, no matter how forced. Others embrace the conspiracies, convinced we are subjects in an ancient experiment. A third camp floats between, uncertain, unsettled, waiting for clarity that never comes. The divisions deepen because each new silence, each new contradiction, pushes people further into their chosen camp. Science is meant to unify through truth, but here it fragments, splintered by pressure it cannot withstand. The breakdown is total. Archaeology cannot explain the sphere. Astronomy cannot explain Atlas. Politics cannot admit the truth, and religion seizes the vacuum. The result is a storm of confusion in which anything becomes possible, in which the strangest theories thrive because nothing else satisfies. And in that storm, the most dangerous possibility emerges. What if the contradictions are not failures, but design? What if the architects wanted this, wanted us confused, divided, speculating wildly? What if the breakdown of science is part of the test, a measure of how we respond when faced with truths we cannot explain? Do we fight each other, or do we seek unity? Do we cling to false certainty, or do we embrace the unknown? Right now, the experiment is running. The Boogosphere sits in secrecy. Atlas drifts across the heavens, and the structures of science crack under the strain. The silence continues, and in that silence the old world dies, and a new one begins to take shape. One built not on certainty, but on the fragments of contradiction. Part 8. The Human Experiment. The idea that we are alone has always been comforting. It allows us to believe that our victories are ours alone, that our mistakes are ours to correct, that history is nothing more than the story of human will. But if the Boogosphere is what it appears to be, if Atlas is more than a comet, then that comfort vanishes. We are no longer the authors of our own story. We are subjects in a test, and the examiners have been watching since before the pyramids were built. Think about the timing. 12,000 years ago, the world was breaking apart. Floods drowned coastlines. Fire fell from the sky. Civilizations we can barely glimpse were wiped clean. At that moment, according to the reports, the sphere was placed, buried like a seed, waiting for its season to return. Who placed it, and why? The simplest answer is also the most unsettling. It was left to watch, to measure, to record the rise and fall of the species that would inherit the Earth. It was not left for us, it was left for them. Now imagine the role of Atlas, a wanderer older than our planet disguised as a comet drifting across the galaxy. When it passes near a seeded world, it transmits. The sphere receives, decodes, responds. The cycle repeats endlessly, system after system, civilization after civilization. We are not unique. We are one among countless experiments, one file among countless others stored in a cosmic archive. The thought is unbearable, but the evidence fits. What is being tested? Perhaps our intelligence, whether we can build technology, whether we can look at the stars and recognize them as homes of others. Perhaps our morality, whether we build societies that care for each other, or whether we collapse into endless war. Perhaps our resilience, whether we can survive cataclysm after cataclysm, rebuilding again and again. The myths of floods, the stories of fire, the memories of resets, all fit the pattern of experiments run to failure. And if that is true, then we are only the latest cycle, not the first and maybe not the last. Evidence of the experiment lies scattered in plain sight. Ruins like Göbekli Tepe appear from nowhere, advanced beyond their age, then are buried deliberately as if to hide the truth until later. Ancient myths describe gods who descend from the sky, not to bless humanity but to judge it, to demand obedience, to punish failure. Genetic studies reveal sudden leaps, bottlenecks, interventions that cannot be fully explained by natural evolution. Each clue is a fragment of a larger design, a design we have refused to see until now. The darker possibility is that we are not being tested for success, but for harvest. The experiment may not be about knowledge or morality, but about utility. What resources do we provide? What data do we generate? What energy do we yield? The boogosphere may be nothing more than a sensor, monitoring the growth of a crop. Atlas may be the courier, carrying the results back to its makers, and when the harvest season comes, when the cycle completes, what will be taken? But even this thought bends into another, more chilling still. What if the test is not about us at all, but about them? What if we're not the subject, but the instrument, a controlled population used to measure conditions, to refine experiments, to prepare for outcomes beyond our comprehension? The architects may not care if we survive or fail. We may be nothing more than one more entry in a galactic lab book. Our wars, our empires, our inventions, all nothing more than notes scribbled in margins. The experiment has already revealed one thing. We fracture easily. The discovery of a single sphere in a single interstellar object has already broken science, shaken politics, and divided the world into camps of belief and denial. Perhaps that is the result itself. Perhaps the architects wanted to know how long it would take for a species to turn on itself when faced with truth. If that is the test, then the experiment is already producing results, and the results are not good. Right now the test continues. The boogosphere waits, silent yet not silent, vibrating with a hum that may be meaningless or may be code. Atlas draws closer to its perihelion, its coma brightening, its gases spilling into space like a signal hidden in light. The two instruments are aligned, the experiment is running, and humanity is under observation. The examiners are silent, but their silence is the louder sound of all. What if the entire arc of human history has been the experiment? Not a single trial, but a sequence of escalating challenges. At first, survival. Could we endure the ice, the predators, the scarcity? Then cooperation. Could we form tribes, villages, cities without tearing each other apart? Then creation. Could we invent tools, art, language, agriculture, technology? Each step a data point, each collapse a correction. When civilizations felt a flood or fire, it may not have been failure of nature but a deliberate reset, a button pressed to clear the slate and try again. The experiment may not be limited to our species. Consider the other branches of humanity that once walked beside us: Neanderthals, Denisovans, the mysterious ghost populations whose DNA lingers in our blood. Why did we survive when they did not? Perhaps we were not the winners of chance, but the chosen variable in the experiment, selected for endurance, for adaptability, for curiosity. The boogosphere may have been placed to watch us specifically, to monitor whether the chosen strain could reach the threshold of awareness. The myths of gods punishing humanity fit this pattern with unnerving precision. The Sumerians wrote of Anu and Enlil deciding the fate of humans, choosing who would live and who would be destroyed. The Bible tells of God looking upon the earth, finding it corrupt, and sending the flood. The Hindu texts speak of cycles of yugas, each ending with destruction before a new age begins. If we strip away the divine language, what remains is the language of evaluation, of results tallied, of tests passed or failed. The experiment is not only physical, it is psychological. How do we respond when confronted with the unknown? Do we collapse into fear? Do we lash out in violence? Or do we expand into curiosity and cooperation? The boogosphere is not just a device, it is a mirror, reflecting our reactions back to the examiners. The way we handle its discovery may be the true test, more important than the artifact itself. And so far, our reaction has been panic, secrecy, denial, conspiracy. If that is the grade, we are failing. But the architects may not grade us as we grade ourselves. Perhaps the very chaos of our response is what they want to see. A species that fractures may be dangerous, but also unpredictable, inventive, harder to control. A species that unifies may be stable, but also stagnant, predictable, easier to manipulate. The test may not have a pass or fail, it may only gather data, and the result is not judgment but classification. We are being categorized, filed, recorded, our strengths and weaknesses catalogued for purposes we cannot yet imagine. Now stretch the thought further. If Atlas is the messenger, then perhaps this data is not stored here at all. Perhaps the sphere gathers it, encodes it, transmits it upward, and Atlas relays it outward, carrying our record into the galaxy. Our wars, our art, our triumphs, our failures, all reduced to patterns of frequency, streamed across the void to those who set the experiment in motion. To them we are not history, not culture, not identity, but data. The most frightening possibility is that the experiment is reaching its conclusion. Atlas may not be here to transmit more questions, but to receive the final answers. The boogosphere may not be waiting to gather more information, but to deliver its report. 12,000 years of data, 12,000 years of observation, about to be packaged, completed, and sent back. And when the report is delivered, what happens then? Will the examiners decide we're ready for contact, or that we're ready for erasure? The human mind recoils from this, because we are wired to believe in agency, in free will, in our ability to choose. But in the logic of the experiment, our choices have never been ours alone. They have been the variables, the parameters, the factors measured against outcomes. We were never the authors, we were the subjects, and the pen was always in someone else's hand. Right now, the final questions are being written. The boogosphere sits under guard, silent but heavy with purpose. Atlas drifts closer to the sun, its coma glowing brighter each night. The experiment is reaching its climax, and we are all inside the lab, whether we admit it or not. Part 9. Countdown to contact. The world is counting down, though no clock can display the numbers. The timer is written in the slow arc of a body from another star, a traveller older than Earth itself, now racing toward its closest brush with our Sun. Astronomers call it perihelion, a moment defined by mathematics, the peak of brightness, the maximum of energy, the one point in its path where distance, heat and light converge into climax. The object has been named Atlas, but the name is too small for what it has become. To billions, it is no longer just a comet. It is a sign, a warning, a question, perhaps even an answer. Governments know the date, and so do scientists, and so does anyone who has followed the story since the discovery. The alignment is inevitable, as precise as a blade. The Earth spins toward the moment as surely as the galaxy itself turns. No speech, no denial, no secrecy can stop it. The question is not whether it will happen, but what will happen when it does. Every day ATLAS grows brighter. Telescopes track it and their images stream across the internet, but the data released to the public is thin, curated, filtered. Independent astronomers speak of anomalies, sudden flares, unexpected jets of gas, spectra that resist interpretation. Official agencies counter with cautious explanations, exotic ices, unique processes, models stretched until they nearly snap. But the public has already lost patience. If this were only a comet, why the secrecy? Why the contradiction? Why the silence that grows heavier the closer the object comes? And the silence is matched on Earth. The boogosphere remains locked away under guard, its location unknown, its presence denied. Yet rumours escape. Workers whisper of vibrations that shake the ground at night, of instruments that register frequencies beyond hearing, of lights that flicker when no one touches the switches. Some claim that signals from ATLAS and pulses from the sphere already mirror each other, as if the two are locked in dialogue across millions of kilometres. The thought spreads like wildfire. The experiment is no longer waiting for contact. The contact has already begun. Around the world the pressure builds. Protesters march in streets demanding disclosure, waving signs that say we have a right to know. Preachers fill churches, warning that judgment is near, pointing to prophecies of fire from the sky and trumpets of the heavens. New cults appear overnight, some promising salvation through devotion to the sphere, others urging followers to prepare for ascension when ATLAS reaches its peak. Meanwhile, survivalists dig deeper into bunkers, hoarding food, convinced the countdown ends not in revelation, but in annihilation. The internet is a storm. Every telescope image is dissected, every rumour amplified, every silence interpreted as proof. Videos claim to show secret convoys moving the sphere, helicopters carrying it beneath tarps, submarines transporting it to undersea bases. Other videos claim ATLAS is already transmitting visible codes in its tail, that its brightness flickers in patterns like Morse across the stars. None can be proven, yet millions believe, because the official story no longer satisfies. In the vacuum of certainty, imagination becomes truth. Meanwhile, the scientific establishment fractures. Some hold fast to the explanation of a natural comet, no matter how strange its properties. Others whisper privately that the anomalies cannot be explained, that they are watching something unprecedented. A few dare to speak publicly, suggesting the possibility of technology, of design, of intent. They're ridiculed, mocked, silenced, yet their voices spread, because they say aloud what countless others think in secret. The breakdown infects politics. Legislators demand hearings, generals whisper of threats, presidents dodge questions. No one admits fear, but everyone feels it. Military satellites are repositioned, budgets quietly redirected, space agencies placed under direct control of intelligence committees. None of this is public, yet the movements are visible to those who know where to look. The world is preparing for something, though no one will say what. And through it all the countdown ticks. Not seconds, not minutes, but the steady pull of gravity, the relentless march of orbital mechanics. ATLAS is approaching the moment when it will blaze brightest in our skies, and then the boogosphere is waiting, silent yet restless, like a drum stretched too tight. Humanity is caught between earth and sky, watching as two impossibilities align, knowing that the climax cannot be delayed. The imagination races ahead of the moment. Some fear the sphere will open, splitting like a seed pod, unleashing technology beyond comprehension, perhaps salvation, perhaps destruction. Others believe ATLAS will fragment, releasing objects that will rain upon Earth, as happened in the Younger Dryas, when fire and ice shattered ancient civilizations. Others still whisper of resonance, of frequencies rising to a peak, of vibrations that could alter minds, bodies, even the planet itself. History offers no comfort. The myths of floods, of fire from the heavens, of gods who descend in judgment, all point to cycles, to resets, to endings that are also beginnings. If the sphere was placed to survive such a cycle, then perhaps the last countdown ended in catastrophe. If so, we are not the first to stand at this threshold. We may simply be the latest test subject in a cycle as old as time. Religious leaders urge calm, yet many admit privately that the signs are undeniable. Prophecies long dismissed as metaphor seem to unfold in real time. Astronomers continue to issue updates, yet their language grows strained, their explanations hollow. Politicians promise safety, yet their eyes betray fear. Everywhere the tension builds, because the world knows the moment cannot be avoided. And then comes the thought that keeps even the most rational awake at night. What if the contact has already happened, invisible to human senses, hidden in codes we cannot read, in frequencies we cannot hear? What if the sphere has already answered, and Atlas has already received, and the experiment has already entered its final phase? If that is true, then the countdown is not toward communication, but toward action. The sky glows brighter each night. The sphere hums louder in whispers. The people grow more restless. The governments grow more silent. The scientists grow more divided. The countdown moves with inevitability. And the question that once felt abstract now feels immediate, urgent, inescapable. What happens when the sky speaks and the earth answers? In Tokyo, crowds gather on rooftops with telescopes, watching Atlas grow brighter each night, photographing its faint red glow as if capturing proof of a god returning. In Cairo, preachers call the object the Eye of Ra, declaring that the sun god has sent a messenger to awaken the world. In New York, protesters clash with riot police outside the United Nations, demanding that secret information about the Booga sphere be released before the comet reaches its peak. In Bogota, whispers ripple that Colombia has become the unwilling centre of an apocalypse, the land chosen to house the artifact that will decide the fate of humanity. Everywhere the countdown is felt, though no clock displays it. Television stations broadcast live sky maps, newspapers print charts of the object's trajectory, podcasts speculate endlessly about what will happen on the day of perihelion. The world has turned its gaze upward, and every day that passes feels heavier than the one before. In laboratories, the scientists work in silence. Teams analyze emissions from Atlas, measuring gases, modeling dust, running simulations that always end with contradictions. Each report contains words like unusual, unexpected, unprecedented. The language of certainty has collapsed, replaced by hedges and disclaimers. In private, some admit they are no longer sure they are studying geology at all. One researcher describes the object as a disguised signal buoy, another as a frozen archive of alien chemistry, another as a machine older than Earth itself. None of these theories reach the public, yet the rumours leak anyway, fueling the storm outside. At the facility where the Boogosphere is hidden, the guards double, the fences rise higher, and the rumours grow stranger. Some say the sphere glows faintly in the dark, others that it vibrates in rhythm with the rising brightness of Atlas. Engineers claim that sensors placed nearby record signals in ranges beyond human hearing, pulses that repeat with mathematical precision. The data is classified, yet pieces slip through the cracks, circulating online, decoded, reinterpreted, exaggerated. To the public, the sphere is already alive, already speaking, already answering the call from the sky. Governments prepare for outcomes they cannot predict. Emergency broadcasts are scripted in advance, to be aired if mass panic erupts. Military bases rehearse drills, ready to deploy under cover of natural disaster. Intelligence agencies circulate reports warning of cults planning mass suicides, militias preparing attacks, economies bracing for collapse if the truth is admitted. Leaders meet in sealed chambers, trading information in whispers, knowing none of them can control what is coming. And then there is the psychological weight, the gnawing awareness that the countdown cannot be escaped. People describe strange dreams of glowing orbs, of voices whispering from the sky, of waters rising again. Psychologists suggest it is mass hysteria, a global panic born of uncertainty. But what if it is something else? What if the sphere itself is already affecting minds, projecting images, shaping thoughts, preparing humanity in ways we cannot yet measure? The line between paranoia and influence blurs, and fear spreads faster than fact. The anticipation fractures along familiar lines. The optimists call ATLAS a herald of a new age, a cosmic envoy bringing wisdom, promising a leap into contact. The pessimists see doom, a weapon about to trigger floods and fire as it did 12,000 years ago. The pragmatists cling to science, insisting it must be natural, insisting that nothing will happen, insisting that all will be explained in time. But the insistence feels thinner each day, like paint peeling from a wall, unable to hide the cracks beneath. The countdown continues. No one can stop it. No one can delay it. No one can hide from it. The comet glows brighter, the sphere hums louder, and the world holds its breath. Part 10. The Message for Humanity. The moment arrives not with thunder but with silence, not with certainty but with dread. ATLAS reaches its perihelion, blazing brighter than ever before, its coma swelling into a red halo that stains the night sky. Telescopes across the world record its light. Spectrographs pass its emissions, sensors measure its jets, but the data twists out of models, refusing to behave. The object is not only brighter, it is rhythmic, pulsing, its brightness rising and falling like a heartbeat. Some call it a natural fluctuation, others call it a signal, but whatever the truth, the world feels it. At the same moment, deep in the guarded facility where the Boogosphere rests, the hum grows louder. Guards report vibrations that shake the walls, lights flicker in corridors, electronics fail without reason. The sphere itself glows faintly, a red reflection echoing the colour of ATLAS above. Sensors record pulses in perfect alignment with the comet's rhythm, as if the earthbound orb and the starborn traveller are beating as one heart across the void. The connection is no longer speculation, it is undeniable, visible, tangible. The world reacts as one, though in different voices. In churches, bells toll, preachers declare that prophecy has been fulfilled, that the gods have returned to judge the earth. In streets, crowds gather to watch the glowing streak across the sky, some in awe, some in terror, some on their knees in prayer. In bunkers, survivalists clutch weapons, convinced the flood is about to come again. In universities, scientists stare at data streams, whispering that they're witnessing communication, a dialogue not meant for human ears. And then comes the first shock. Instruments tuned to electromagnetic ranges record bursts of structured noise, not random, not natural, but patterned, repeating with mathematical clarity. The signals emerge from ATLAS, and they are answered by pulses from the Boogosphere. Back and forth across millions of kilometres, a conversation begins. Humanity listens, yet cannot decode. The language is alien, the structure beyond comprehension, but the intent is clear. Two devices, separated by time and distance, are speaking to each other again. The fear deepens. If this is communication, then it is not meant for us. We are eavesdroppers, insects overhearing the words of giants. The messages may contain instructions, commands, reports, judgments. The sphere may be transmitting 12,000 years of data, everything it has recorded about us, our wars, our cultures, our technologies. ATLAS may be receiving, storing, preparing to carry the information back into the galaxy. Humanity itself may be nothing more than a case study, a line in an endless experiment, a story already ending as it began. But others see hope. If we can decode the signals, we may gain knowledge beyond imagination, science that could leap us forward by centuries, medicine that could cure all disease, energy that could power entire civilizations. The signals may not be judgment, but invitation, a doorway opening into the wider cosmos. If only we can understand, if only we can prove ourselves ready. The governments struggle to contain the truth, but the sky cannot be hidden, nor can the hum of the sphere. The data leaks, fragments of the signals circulate online, decoded by amateurs into strange patterns that look like symbols, like maps, like instructions. Conspiracies multiply. Some claim the signals are coordinates, pointing to places on Earth where other spheres are buried. Others claim they are genetic codes, messages hidden within DNA itself. Others still believe they are warnings, countdowns to a reset we cannot escape. And all the while, the pulses grow faster, stronger, more insistent, as if the dialogue is accelerating toward a conclusion. The climax is near, and the world knows it. The myths echo once more, louder than ever. The Sumerians spoke of gods who came in fiery chariots, who judged and departed. The Hebrews told of floods sent to cleanse the earth. The Hindus wrote of cycles of ages, each ending in destruction. The Hopi warned of worlds that rise and fall, each destroyed before the next begins. Now the myths and the present blur. Humanity stands in the same place as its ancestors did, watching the sky, waiting for judgment, waiting for renewal, waiting for whatever comes next. And then, silence. The pulses stop. The comet drifts past its peak, its glow fading, its tail stretching away from the sun. The sphere quiets, its hums sinking back into stillness. The instruments record nothing. The signals vanish. The dialogue ends. To human senses, nothing has changed. The world is the same, yet everyone knows it is not. For 12,000 years the Boogosphere waited. For billions of years Atlas wandered. They met for a moment, spoke in a language beyond us, and moved on. What was said, what was decided, we do not know. Perhaps the message has been sent. Perhaps the judgment has been passed. Perhaps the invitation has been offered. The experiment may be over, or it may only have begun. The message for humanity is not in the signals, not in the data, not in the words we cannot decode. The message is in the mirror they hold up to us. Faced with mystery, we fractured. Faced with the unknown, we panicked. Faced with possibility, we fought ourselves more than we sought answers. The sphere and the comet have shown us not only that we are not alone, but that we are not ready. And yet, there is still time. Atlas drifts away into the dark. The sphere sinks back into silence, but both remain. They will wait as they always have, as they always will. The architects are patient. The experiment is long. The next cycle will come, and when it does, humanity will face the same question again. What will we do when the sky speaks, and the earth answers? The silence that follows is heavier than the signals themselves. For days, then weeks, people stare at the sky where Atlas burned brightest, watching its light diminish, a red ember fading into the black. Some call it anticlimax, a disappointment, proof that nothing supernatural ever happened. But the world does not feel the same. The air feels charged, like the echo of thunder long after the storm has passed. Governments release statements, bland and calculated. They call Atlas a comet, unusual but natural, nothing more. They refuse to comment on the Boogosphere at all. Yet, their reassurances ring hollow, because the silence before was suspicious, and the silence after is unbearable. People remember the pulses, the flares, the rumours of hums. They remember the contradictions, the guarded secrecy, the sudden shifts in official language. The story cannot be buried because too many saw it unfold with their own eyes. In homes across the world, people feel haunted. They dream of orbs, of signals, of floods and fires. Some feel drawn to ancient myths, rereading stories they once dismissed as fantasy, now wondering if they were warnings. Others feel paranoia seeping into every corner, convinced that the experiment has ended and the judgment has already been written. The uncertainty is worse than certainty because no one knows whether the silence means safety or doom. Religions fracture under the weight of the event. Some claim the architects are angels, their signals divine messages hidden in frequencies beyond human ears. Others declare them demons, deceivers cloaked in light and metal. Still others embrace them as gods, the return of beings long promised in prophecy. Faith split into factions, each rewriting doctrine in the face of what has happened. The spiritual landscape fractures, and in that fracture new cults bloom, worshipping the sphere, praying to Atlas, waiting for the next cycle to begin. Science tries to recover, but the cracks remain. Some researchers insist the signals were artifacts of instruments, glitches, misinterpretations. Others quietly admit that the patterns were real, structured, undeniable. But even the most honest voices cannot escape the truth that they do not know what was said. The dialogue happened beyond them, outside their reach. Science is supposed to answer questions, but here it can only confess ignorance, and ignorance is a wound that festers in the public imagination. The Boogosphere rests once more, silent as stone, yet no one sees it the same way again. It is no longer an artifact, no longer a curiosity. It is an active participant in something vast. Whatever passed between it and Atlas is finished for now, but the device still waits, as it has always waited. People ask themselves what it contains, what it remembers, what it is preparing for next. The silence feels like a pause, not an ending. And that is the most unsettling truth. The architects, whoever they are, have patience measured not in years, but in eons. They have watched us for 12,000 years already. They will watch us for 12,000 more if they wish. We are inside their experiment, inside their story, whether we admit it or not. Atlas may have drifted on, but others will follow. The sphere may rest, but it can awaken again. The cycle has no end that we can see, only intervals between tests. The message for humanity is not a sentence written in code, not a word hidden in light. It is a mirror, a reflection of what we became when faced with the unknown. We divided, we panicked, we fought, but we also dreamed. We imagined gods and architects. We searched for meaning. We questioned everything we thought we knew. Perhaps that is the point. Perhaps the experiment is not to see if we pass or fail, but to see if we can still imagine, still reach, still hunger for truth even when it terrifies us. The sky is dark again. The sphere is silent again, but the weight of the moment lingers. Humanity has been reminded that we are not alone, that we never were, that the universe is older and stranger than we dare admit. The architects have spoken without words, and the silence they leave behind is the loudest sound we have ever heard. Conclusion. Standing at the edge. The world did not end when Atlas reached its peak. The skies did not rain fire, the oceans did not rise to swallow the coasts, the cities did not collapse into dust. On the surface, nothing changed at all. And yet, beneath the calm, everything changed. Humanity has seen something it cannot unsee, heard something it cannot unhear. The sphere spoke to the sky answered, and in that exchange the illusion of isolation shattered forever. For centuries we told ourselves we were the masters of our own story. We believed that history was the march of human will, that the stars were distant lights with no bearing on our fate. The discovery of the Boogosphere tore a hole in that belief. The arrival of Atlas widened it into a wound that will never close. If we are being watched, if we are being tested, if we are part of a cycle older than our civilizations, then our story is not our own. It is one chapter in a book written by hands we cannot see. This is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it means we are small, fragile, vulnerable, subject to forces beyond our control. Liberating because it means we're not alone, that the universe is alive with intelligence, that the story of life is vaster than we ever dreamed. For some, this is despair. For others, it is hope. For all, it is unavoidable. The myths of our ancestors no longer sound like fantasies. They sound like memories, distorted but true, warnings carried through time in symbols and songs. Floods, fires, wheels of light, gods descending from the heavens, all echoes of previous cycles, previous encounters, previous tests. We dismissed them as legends, yet now they feel like history written in allegory. If that is true, then our ancestors faced the same question we face now, and their answers determined their survival. The ruins they left behind are reminders of what happens when civilizations are judged and found wanting. The lesson of the Boogosphere and Atlas is not only that we are not alone, but that we're not finished. We are a work in progress, an experiment still unfolding, a story not yet complete. The architects have shown their hand, but only briefly, only enough to remind us that the cycle continues. The true question is not what they want, but what we will do with the knowledge they have given us. Do we collapse into fear, tearing ourselves apart as we argue over meanings we cannot prove? Do we build religions around artifacts, waiting passively for gods to save or condemn us? Do we retreat into denial, pretending nothing happened, comforting ourselves with silence? Or do we rise? Do we accept that the universe is stranger than we imagined, that our history is older than we believed, that our future is unwritten? If the experiment is real, then perhaps the architects are not searching for perfection, but for potential. Not for obedience, but for resilience. Not for silence, but for imagination. Perhaps the true test is whether we can face the unknown and still move forward, still create, still seek truth. If so, then the message for humanity is simple. We are not finished and we are not powerless. The countdown has passed, but another will come. Atlas drifts away, but another wanderer will follow. The sphere is quiet, but it can awaken again. The cycle is not over, only paused. The architects have patience, patience beyond measure, and they will wait as long as they need to. When the next moment comes, will we be ready? Humanity now stands at the edge of two futures. In one, we continue as we are, divided, fearful, clinging to old certainties even as they crumble. In that future, the next test will break us, as it broke those before us. In the other, we face the truth, we accept the mystery, we rise to the challenge. In that future, the next test may lift us into a new age, an age where we are no longer subjects, but participants, no longer experiments, but explorers. The sphere is silent, but its presence speaks. The sky is dark, but its memory glows. The architects remain hidden, but their shadow covers us. The story is not over, and the ending is not written. The message is not simply that we are watched or judged or tested. The message is that we are seen, that we matter, that our choices ripple across the cosmos. We may never know what was said between the sphere and Atlas. We may never decode the language, never grasp the intent. But we know this much. They spoke, and in their speaking they reminded us of the most ancient truth of all. The universe is alive, and it is listening.